Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, I'm Charlie Steffens with Bridge Athletic. I'll be introducing Craig, and we're going to get to that as quickly as possible. First off, just want to share our gratitude to everyone for joining this educational event. It's amazing to see everyone. A couple of housekeeping notes. Please type your questions into the question area. It should be in your panel. We'll get to Q&A at the end, so we'll try to get to as many as possible there. If you are having any technical issues, leverage the chat. Matt Talmadge is the organizer. You should be able to chat him directly. Without further ado, I want to introduce Craig a little bit. So Craig has been the director of programming and coaching for the past 16 years at Results Fitness, touted one of America's top gyms. I think those of you who know Results Fitness know so much more than that, and we'll get into that a little bit. But I was also speaking with Craig recently about his beginnings as a PE teacher, then working at a university, and now 16 years at Results Fitness. Just such a tremendous achievement to have that tenure and that experience. Craig is also a best-selling author, Secrets of Successful Program Design. Hopefully we'll get some of those secrets and maybe even more uncovered today. From a personal note, I met Craig along with a colleague of mine, Rob Hartman, while Craig was evaluating systems platforms for his program design. And our relationship developed because he eventually chose to work with Bridge Athletic, but it definitely escalated when the pandemic hit. And Results Fitness needed to quickly mobilize and digitize, not only for their training clients, but Results Fitness also is an educational institution. They have members, they have a university where they help other coaches, other facilities, and it was amazing to partner with them in that moment. And one of our quickest and most rigorous, like fast implementation done for a large group. Our partnership, just for everyone who hasn't been introduced to how it works between Bridge and Results Fitness definitely leverages Bridge Athletic to design programs, deliver those programs within their facility, remotely to their clients, track data, and become more effective in how they're training clients. So they're a great kind of leader and example of how Bridge Athletic can help an institution and organization. But secondly, I mentioned that they are an educational institution. So those coaches and those organizations that Results Fitness is working with to help them be better training organizations, optimize their business. We've worked together to create kind of a Results Fitness version of Bridge Athletic with a library with content that Craig has been instrumental in helping develop. So I just want to say, Craig, it's a pleasure, and it has been a pleasure working with you. Thank you again for being here. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Charlie. I appreciate the introduction a great deal, and I appreciate everybody joining on the call for sure. It's an honor to see how many people signed up for the webinar. I know everyone's not going to be here that signed up in person, but I know you're looking forward to the recording as well. So definitely want to deliver on that. And please do, as Charlie said, make sure that you ask lots of questions. I love answering questions. In fact, I'm even better at answering questions than I am of volunteering information a lot of times, as you may discover. And I am more than happy at the end of this presentation, if there's a specific thing that you want to see. The beauty of this is that I can just share my screen and show you exactly some kind of specific, granular, in the weeds, detailed thing that you want to see, without a doubt. So a little bit about my background too. I just want to go over as well. I was actually not at a university. I was at a high school as a strength coach. So I worked as a physical education teacher in the public sector for 5 years in the 7th grade level down here in Santa Monica. Then I moved out to Indianapolis, Indiana. I actually lived there for 5 years working one-on-one and as a high school strength coach. And then I've been here at Results Fitness for the past, this is my 16th year. So I've seen a lot of things, done a lot of things within that time frame, had lots of mentors and educators through that time frame. And hopefully it hasn't been 20 years of the same repeat. It's definitely been 20 years of growth as I've learned a whole lot more and put that stuff into action. And definitely that's going to be apparent here with what we're going to discuss today, which is programming in the digital age. We had a presentation over here at our conference center next to the gym about 6 months ago or so. We had a financial guy, John Vance, a local guy, come over, and he called the last 2 years the era of the digital disruption, without a doubt. So I think all of us, kind of everything is really swayed over to the digital side of things, and we were kind of forced into that over the last 2 years for obvious reasons. There's some pros and cons to that, without a doubt. And as the pendulum likes to sway from one side to the both, we're going to talk today about some of the advantages of that, because there are obvious advantages and a couple of disadvantages that you can find ways to work around, and how to integrate this stuff into your life with constraints and boundaries and different things like that. So that is my goal today, is to share with you kind of our journey, how we did that, how we moved over from spreadsheets and Word documents over to a digital system, and some of the things that how we were able to do that, and how it integrated seamlessly for that. So if you're still doing that and using Google Docs and sending videos separately to remote clients, I'm going to hopefully convince you that there's a better way. I'm definitely not a guy that likes change for the sake of change, without a doubt. I'm 50 years old, so I've kind of seen lots of different things over the years that I've been alive, technology-wise, without a doubt. I grew up in the era of where color TVs just came on the scene. We didn't have remote controls all the way till now, where, we have a computer that we walk around with on our pocket on a regular basis. So I've seen quite a bit, and I definitely think change for the sake of change isn't what we want. We want change if change is for the better. And I'm going to try and show you today, and hopefully convince you, why you should change to a digital system if you're still using spreadsheets or Word documents or Google Docs, however you do that. What I also want to do, those of you that may be new to the bridge and using a different platform, and sometimes when you are using a different platform, it's like a lot of overhead and time investment to switch platforms. I'm going to show you why I think this is a superior alternative for you, because I looked at a lot of different platforms, as Charlie said, prior to the pandemic. Because even before that started, we were getting ready to switch to a digital platform because we wanted to stay progressing and switch to something that was better. So hopefully I've got something for everybody today as we go through this. And I also want to share with you some lessons about programming as well, just to see the perspective on how we approach the program design process, and how we've integrated some stuff from the book that we wrote during the pandemic as well into the system, and how it worked all seamlessly. So let's move forward here. So a little bit more about myself. I was voted the shyest kid in my high school class of 500 people, believe it or not. Public speaking was always a nightmare for me, without a doubt. It gave me tons of anxiety. I don't really think I was all that shy. I think that really I was more self-conscious more than anything else. And I held a lot of self-limiting beliefs about myself. So Simon Sinek has the great book, Start With Why. And I think back to why I got into this coaching, teaching profession. And I had a couple of very influential coaches in my upbringing that really, as Martin Rooney likes to say, coaches believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And these people had so much belief in me. They saw more for me and kind of shattered some of those self-limiting beliefs that I held, and made me be more confident, in all honesty. So when I think back to why I coach, the reason why I do that is I want to make other people feel the way my coaches made me feel, and give that confidence and shatter those self-limiting beliefs. And it's very rewarding in this profession to teach skills and see people do things that they never even dreamed possible. So that's my why. And with that, I like teaching how to use softwares. I think a lot of times when people get into, I'm not good with a computer, I'm not good with Excel, I'm not good with this digital stuff, I think that's a self-limiting belief. And I want to show you how you can be better at that if you're a little bit hesitant, or how you can improve your skills. So that's my why, and why we're doing this presentation today. Within my role at Results Fitness, I've coached a powerlifting team. I'm kind of a recreational powerlifter, and I've coached a team since 2008, where we compete at least twice a year. very involved in the Strong First community as well. We do the Tactical Strength Challenge twice a year as well. I work with a lot of general population clients most of the time. We take people from, again, achieving things they never dreamed possible into being what we call executive athletes. We have all spectrums across the board at Results Fitness. That's one of the cool things about being here. There is every size, shape, skill level, pro athletes down to people that have never picked up a weight before in their life. We get to do all of that. So it's really, really varied as far as the different experiences that we've had. And another thing about me, if you look at that picture in the right-hand corner, I was a stunt double for Patrick Swayze. Just kidding. I wasn't a stunt double. They said I was too big. They thought I'd be smaller. And if you've seen Roadhouse, you get that joke. If you don't get that joke at all, you need to make sure you watch Roadhouse. When for our interns, what we often have them do is I give them a list of movies they need to watch so they get my jokes. But that it was a pretty sweet mullet back in the day that I had, and I was often confused for Patrick Swayze. But that was a long time ago, just to prove that I am a little bit older, in case you didn't believe me. So the other thing that I implore you to do is please stay with us till the end of the presentation. I have a gift for you as well, which is part of the exact systems that we use at Results Fitness. This is a rubric that we use to evaluate coaching habits, and you can print this out, use it, tweak it around, make it your own. Please feel free. I love using rubrics and the scales of 1 to 5. It's something that my mentor for teaching taught me. John Fleming out at A.E. Wright Middle School was a National PE Teacher of the Year, and he shared a lot of different things about these different types of rubrics and self-rating type things to use for yourself and to be ranked on as a manager. So I want to share that with you. I think it's a very valuable thing to get some introspection of yourself, which is very useful to figure out areas of improvement that you may need. So let's get into the presentation. Enough about me. We design programs, not workouts. That's definitely something that is a mantra that we are known for. So what exactly does that mean to write a program and not a workout? So something we discuss in great detail in the book that Charlie mentioned that we wrote over the pandemic, that was released during the pandemic, I should say. I think we tried to kind of put everything in there on how to go from to develop a system to write programs. And this is really not a book geared for the general population. This is actually designed for the Fit Pro to give you kind of the blueprint for how to do these things. So I'm going to share some of that with you. So when we look at the program design process, we want to look at it from going from a big picture to small picture process. We start with a macro cycle, which is our kind of big framework idea. That's 8 to 12 weeks for a program for a specific goal. And it could be up to 1 year, traditionally in periodization, that could have been the Olympic cycle of 4 years. Then we break that big block down for that big, gigantic goal down to our monthly blocks or mesocycles. Then within each mesocycle, we chunk that down to the weekly training rotations of how the sessions are structured. And from that, we develop our individual training sessions, which are the exercises performed in a sequence at a certain amount of reps for a certain amount of sets with given tempos, the speed of performance of the exercise, with rest periods, and appropriately selected loads. Now, this is the reverse of how most people design a program if you go into a kind of a big box gym. What most trainers do is they start at the bottom here and they select exercises first and then move forward from that. So what we're doing in effect is kind of randomly prescribing exercises and without any sight of the big picture. So a workout is a portion of the overall big picture process of the program design process. It's not a program in and of itself. It's a piece of it. So it's got to be chipped down that way and chunked down that way without a doubt. So in our terminology, we consider the program, which is a macro cycle. That's a complete training plan. That is our program, the plan, how we're going to do things. It's the outline of the sequence of the monthly training blocks, how we're sequencing those mesocycles. It could be a year or as little as 2 months for a specific goal, like we were training right now for the tactical strength challenge. That's a 8-week macro cycle. And then the phases, which are mesocycles, those are those typical 4 to 6 week monthly training blocks consisting of a group of training weeks, which are the microcycles. That's the training weeks, the sequence of training days for the entire week. It doesn't have to be constrained to the exact calendar. That's just a very easy way to think about it, but it can be, you know, a little bit more, a little bit less than that, but it's just an easy way to kind of frame it in your mind. And then from there, we look at our individual training days or sessions. Those are the individual workouts. Some people don't like to call it a workout, prefer training session. Workout sometimes infers that there is no purpose to the training. You're just trying to get some exercise in. When we say training day or a session, that is more, it has a purposeful part of the overall programming plan. So if you look at a workout without respect to the whole overall program or training plan, it doesn't really amount to much. We don't want to have random workouts done together without having to have a desired outcome. We want to be able to have random workouts, like Chip Conrad up in Sacramento says, one of our colleagues, random workouts lead to random results. We want to plan for an intended outcome. And that's what a program is. It's not workouts of the day with no respect to the overall big picture. We have to pay respect to the big picture without a doubt. So that's a difference, really, what it comes down to between programs and just workouts. So the beauty of this on the Bridge platform, and one of the reasons why this works so well with that, is it fits perfectly into our philosophy. That's why I show you this little screenshot here. When we go into the library on our Bridge menu, it is set up exactly the way I just showed you in that pyramid. We've got our program. If you look at the menu bar on the top here, we got our program, and then we've got our phases, which are those mesocycles, also known as blocks of training. And some people speak in terminology, not to be confused with the blocks over here. So we'll try and keep this very, very clear. We'll talk about nomenclature a little bit later on in standardization, later on in the presentation. But just so it's kind of on the same page, so everybody's speaking from the same place. We've got our programs, we got our phases, which are our mesocycles, our workouts or training sessions. It doesn't matter to me what we call those, as long as we know they're the same thing. And then our blocks. What blocks are the components of the individual training session and how we split that up, which we'll detail. And that's, again, broken down from macro to micro. Now we're looking at exercises, and then we could possibly have templates saved for different types of set rep parameters and all that good stuff on the extremely granular level. And the nice thing about the Bridge is you can save a lot of these things as templates, so you don't have to replicate your work every time and write something from scratch. And it's very easily searchable as well. We'll get into that here in a second. So I want to take a step back for a moment and go over our 4 steps of program design that we discussed in the book. And here are those 4 steps. Number 1, we're going to determine our goal. Number 2, we determine our starting point or our training status, our entry point. Then we determine how long our time frame is, what our constraints are as far as that goes. And then what we do is we plan backwards using that big picture thinking down to the small part, and then we execute going forward. We don't start with what exercises am I going to do or what workout am I going to do today and then execute going forward. We've already got a larger plan in place that we have reverse engineered to try and get a desired outcome. That is our philosophy of programming in a nutshell, and I share this in almost every presentation that I do because I completely believe in it, and it is a cornerstone to writing programs. So let's break that down a little bit further. Step 1, we have to determine what our destination is. A goal without a plan is just a wish. This is why programming is important. Every single program that we write, the very first step when someone asks me to write them a program, what is your goal? That is always the first question each and every time. And then as I go forward and write that program, I need to rate that with respect to the goal. We love what Dan John does. I call it Dan John a strength sage. He calls it the goal is to keep the goal the goal as a programmer. So I want to deliver that based on what you want and what you need. That's really, really important. So every single goal, regardless of a client, will automatically generate some kind of template. It's a blueprint that'll shape the entire program. Template's a word that we're going to discuss a little bit later, so because sometimes it has some negative connotations in some people's mind, but we'll get into that in a moment. But immediately it's going to generate a direction that you're going to travel when someone tells you that what their goal is. I already am starting to shape something in my mind that will become a template. I am a huge fan, and we are a huge fan at Results Fitness of SMART goals, okay? I do not love general goals. I want to make those as specific as possible. That's the S. I want to make them measurable. I want to make them actionable. I want to make sure these goals are realistic. I want to make sure they are time keyed. So that is super, super important, without a doubt. So the question that often comes up when we discuss goals is, can you have multiple goals? Absolutely, you can have multiple goals. But as our good friend, Brendan Marcello says, you can only have one priority. So we have to figure out what the most important thing is. That's gonna be what we're after, is the priority, not just trying to achieve multiple things at once, because as Eric Cressy often says, you can't ride two horses with one butt. That's tough to do when the horses are going in different directions. So what is your priority? That is critical to address that. When we look at these goals, they're going to create some buckets. The people that come see you are usually going to fall into one of three buckets. They're trying to look better, feel better, or perform better. If you're in the strength coach world, the main bucket you're existing in is performing better. If you're in the private sector, you're going to have people that are coming to look better and to just overall feel better. So this is how we create our templates and our frameworks for our clients in these three buckets. So we've got some ways that this is where that blueprint is already being shaped in my mind. I know when you tell me your goal that you're going into one of these buckets. Now there can be a bunch of different offshoots of these buckets as well to get more specific, but generally the program's already starting to take shape, and I'm putting you into one of these buckets in my mind, even if I don't have it clearly laid out yet. That's where it's important to get very specific. So that's the goal process, and that occurs when goal setting process, that occurs when we sit down and do a strategy session with someone. We collect this data and we store all this information within the bridge itself, which is the wonderful aspect of having all those different forms available to us, is we can have this at our fingertips in the same place where we write programs. So the next step in writing programs is, what is our starting point? We have to determine what this is. If I ask someone to give me directions to Las Vegas, please tell me how to get there. Now, since I already told you my starting point, if you jumped on the webinar early, was in Valencia, you could do that because you know where it is. But if I didn't tell you that, you would have to make an assumption of what my starting point is. We don't want to have to assume. We want to figure out a very clear starting point for this. So how do we do that? We utilize the FMS to get a movement quality, kind of fundamental movement analysis of someone. So we've been using that for years. We were one of the first facilities in the private sector to actually utilize the FMS, and that's one of the things that actually drew me to Results Fitness when I came over here from Indianapolis, was to learn more about this process of how we implemented the functional movement screen into general fitness programming. One of the big things that happens when trainers learn the FMS, now it's very, very popular. It wasn't many years ago for people to be familiar with it. Now almost everybody knows what this is. But when you first, as a brand new trainer, get this information, it can tend to paralyze you and you don't know what to do. It's very important. Alan talks about this in a presentation that he did of a seminar with Greg Cook and Lee Burton for the FMS, is we want to start with this program that is already developed with the perfect client in mind. We don't actually use the FMS, believe it or not, to write programs at Results Fitness. And sometimes that shocks people. What we use the FMS for is to make better decisions about our programming. So we use the goal to write programs. The client goal is what we use. And we have this pre-designed plan that we're going to make adaptations to as needed. And we make alterations to this with additional information, which the FMS helps us with. So we know what changes we're going to make with this information. We don't start from scratch with just the FMS and go forward from that. We already got something shaped. But that's just one part of our program design starting point process. We still have to remember goals. That's first and foremost. What is their goal? I can make someone move really well, and it takes me 2 months to do that, and all of a sudden I've got their inline lunge from a 1 to a 2, but they haven't lost any fat. I lose that person as a client. So we've got to deliver all this stuff with respect to their goals, without a doubt. And the other big thing that we have to factor in when it comes to the starting point is their training history. What have they done previously? Are they a complete novice to strength training? Are they a complete novice to sensible training? They've been doing a lot of silly stuff, and they haven't done sensible training. Most of the time, if something's new to someone, we love this quote from Mark Verstegen: you're a beginner. If you haven't done sensible training before, we're going to treat you as a novice to sensible training. Okay, so that's very, very important. Then we also have to factor in health, medical history, and things like that, such as past injuries, chronic conditions, surgeries, medications. If you're on beta blockers, all that kind of stuff is going to have an impact in the things that I prescribe to you, or that we prescribe to you for your training plan, without a doubt. The next step is, how long do we have? Time is a factor that is often forgotten with respect to training. We have to know how long we have to achieve the stated specific goal. It has to be realistic. If my goal as a power lifter is to deadlift 600 pounds and I'm at 400 pounds, that's probably not going to happen in 2 weeks. I've got to chunk that goal down and stretch it out. I can have a kind of a long-term goal. Now I can have achievable benchmarks. So it's got to be realistic. If I'm trying to lose 30 pounds, probably not a good idea to try and do that over the course of 1 week. That's not very sustainable, even if it was possible. So we have to make these things very realistic and express that, how that is with our clients or athletes as well. We also have to consider how many days per week are there available for training. This is part of selecting our training split. How often can you come to the gym? I can write you the world's greatest 4-day-a-week program, but if I haven't asked this question to you, you only have 2 days a week to come in. I've got to tear up that program and start over again and redesign it. So that's critically important. Then I have to know how long you have at each individual training session. We often assume you have an hour, but what if you don't? You only have 45 minutes to get a training session in. We have to make modifications to that. So these questions must be asked up front. And then we will break things down and plan backwards. And that's kind of what I showed you earlier with that upside down pyramid and how we plan things. This is the old MC Hammer, the very first album that I ever bought. It was actually a real physical album that I bought. It was MC Hammer, so I always like to break it down on it. So first thing we have to do is kind of create a plan, okay, with this. So what is this planning idea? This is what periodization really is. What periodization, I think, can be defined as most people will be comfortable defining it as the planned manipulation of training variables. And planned is in that definition, okay? So periodization is a plan. So we take our pyramid here, and this is the very first step that we look at it. This is the framework of it. There's many different forms of periodization and ways to organize your training. We just want to have a very simple framework of this, because the most common variable that we are going to manipulate from a macro cycle standpoint in our world is really, we're manipulating the reps, okay, which also by default will manipulate the loads and sets, because those are all tied together in most instances. So we can use a linear style, which is where volume goes down as the intensity of loading goes up over time. We can look at that from a mesocycle to mesocycle level. We can do non-alternating, where from each mesocycle, the reps zigzag up and down, go up and down. So by default, that is not completely linear. It's linear for a little while as a progression, then it will change and drop back down. And then we can have daily undulating periodization, where the volume is waving from day to day. And there's many different forms and ideas within this. This is just concepts, but this is what we want to start with when we look at the macro cycle, how we are going to structure things. So when we teach programming, this is what we want you to lay out first and foremost. That is what this macro cycle is. What style of periodization are you going to use? If you use conjugate, if you use block periodization, awesome. Less important that what you use than that you use something. So the variables that's most often manipulated, and these are written in what we feel are the most important, doesn't mean that the last one isn't important, just order of importance, is repetitions, sets, loading, which are all parts of the volume equation. And then our tempo, speed of movement, rest periods, and then our exercise selection, we consider the least important of these 6. Doesn't mean it's not important, but it's also the most individualized thing in programming, in all honesty. Most of the time with a lot of programs, if someone is at a very similar training status level from an entry level standpoint, their programs are going to look much more similar than different. Trying to make them look different for the sake of being different isn't good programming, actually. That's actually poor programming, because you want to give them the best program you can. Just because it happens to look very similar doesn't mean it's not individualized. The exercises, I want to give them the best exercise selection that I can do, but it's going to be different depending on what we're presented with and the modifications we may need to make based on things like the FMS and in our injury history. So as we start to break this thing down further, and I didn't get into the mesocycle or the kind of microcycle levels, that's a little bit beyond the scope. I'll take a whole another hour of explanation, but we'll look at our daily training sessions component. So we'll look at kind of how that looks within the bridge actually, and why this was another seamless leap for us to switch over to a digital software. If we look at the daily training session components, we have our ramp, which are range of motion, activation, movement preparation, our core stuff, our power, elasticity, or combination training, our strength resistance training with primary, secondary, and auxiliary movements, energy system training, and regeneration. So that's what our daily session consists of. Within the bridge, it was a very easy switch over to that, because we can construct these exact same components, which the bridge titles as blocks. So those are the same thing. You don't want to confuse block with phases. Just putting that out there. Blocks are the components, and we can create those exact same things within this. So that was a very simple transition from the Excel spreadsheet to the bridge to be able to construct our daily sessions. And then within that, we get a little more granular and break things down. We look at the bottom of that upside down pyramid into our exercises, rep sets, and all that other good stuff. So that's a very 10,000-foot quick and dirty view of the overall program design process, just to kind of show you how we are approaching things. Now, when we switched in the pandemic, right before the pandemic, actually, right when it hit, to a digital platform, we were really looking for something that was the most Excel-like. I really resisted on switching over, because I would be honest with you, I was really married to Excel. I had been using it for years. I didn't want to have to redesign all of our stuff on a digital platform and have to redo all that back-end work. So I really, really resisted it. So I was really looking for something that was very Excel-like, if you would. I actually spent some time, Alan and Rachel Cosgrove sent me down to Exo, so I went through all 3 levels of the Exos mentorship, and I think it was probably 6 months to a year before the pandemic. I knew exactly how Exos was using their Excel spreadsheets, and they used it coincidentally just like we did, with drop-down menus and a whole templating process. So I knew when they went with the bridge that it had to be Excel-like in order to make that transition smoothly. So that was kind of my first clue for switching over. And we tried out a bunch of different other platforms, but quite honestly, those platforms did not follow that kind of big picture to small picture process. It was more of a writing workouts type process that I felt. So that may be different now, I don't know, but that made this transition was very, very seamless for us because it was super Excel-like. So the other nice thing, it was really easy to stay organized within the bridge. It functioned the same way as our desktops, in all honesty. We could put all this into, all programming stuff into the bridge. So back in the day, on our desktops, we organized all of our templates into folders that we kept on our desktop or in like a shared folder that we had on Dropbox for all the coaches to use. So that's what it looked like. And then on the bridge, this is what it looked like as well. We put them into our no teams folder. If you're familiar with the bridge, you know what that is. I'm in the process of moving them over into our organizational folder, but it could be organized the exact same way in the folders tab. So that was awesome. And then my client folders that I had on my computer that I wrote, I kept a list of every client that I ever had, because we write individual programs for our clients. So I had a list of that. I put all of their programs within that folder. You can also do that on the bridge. So on my Coach Craig team, so the way we do this in our organization at our facility is every coach has their own team and all of their clients are on their team. You can create a folder within that for all of your clients, and I house all of their programs within their folder. So that's the other nice thing on that. And then our organization snapshot on the menu bar looks like this. This is the organization where you see all the different athletes that we have on each of our different teams. That's just how we decided to do that. So it kind of helps everybody communicate individually with their clients and not have a whole lot of confusion and traffic with it. You can do that lots of different ways. That just was very seamless, so I can be very accountable to all of the athletes. I know who exactly I am programming for within that, and I can have multiple coaches on these teams as well. So that is the way that we did that within our organization. If we look at this a little closer, the way our programs were designed, when we relate this to Excel, is we had a workbook, which here's our body transformation or fat loss template, version number 10 of that, as it's evolved over the years. This is the level 1 version. It was just a workbook that we would open up. The bridge functions the same way from a programming standpoint. When you look at a program that you've created, that is your workbook. Within that, we have tabs when we open up the workbook. These are our phases of our old Excel spreadsheets. You see these different phases. For our fat loss program, we actually had 10 phases or mesocycles drawn out with the ramp separated, our movement prep stuff separated out from that. And that's how it looked. Within the bridge, here's how it looks. You've got your tabs down here for those phases. So that was a beautiful, seamless transition for us. One thing that we use when we, on our programs, which I'll show you a little bit later when we get into templating process, is we create movement pattern categories for exercises where they're housed. And we had drop-down menus that we use. This is exactly how Exos used it as well, as far as drop-down for that. That's what it looked like on Excel. Here's how it looks on the bridge. Actually, you can custom create tabs for your organization with that movement pattern category. Click on that, and then you will get a drop-down. Now, unfortunately, you can't organize those in sequence, but they are organized alphabetically or by numerical. So that is on there. If you don't, if you don't have too much in there, they're very easy to navigate, and you can search within that as well. So that functions almost identically as long as you know how to use it. And then the other beauty of this was the way that the bridge allowed us to either design or assign programs and what I call, just to use different nomenclature, flexible or fixed program assignment. The bridge calls it playlist or calendar assignment. So the way we program for a lot of our clients, because most of them can come to the gym 2 to 3 days per week for our general pop clients, they're doing an A and a B full body split. So they may do that 3 times a week where those workouts are alternated. or they may do that, you know, A session and a B session 1 time a week on that. When we assign it as a playlist, which gives the client flexibility to move down the list of training sessions back and forth, regardless of what day they come on. So you don't have to assign it to a specific day. So that was awesome because that's how our spreadsheet worked as well. That's what it looks like in the weight room mode. When they select it, this is what it looks like in the mobile view if the client was logged in their own credentials. Now I go a step further and I actually number the workout as well. You don't really need to do that because the workouts are already numbered for you, as I discovered. And this is what it looks like in calendar mode. I do use calendar mode for my powerlifters who may be on a different type of split. Say they're on a 4-day-a-week upper body or upper lower type split. So I assign those to specific days. And it looks a little bit different. It's going to be scheduled on this, and that's how it's read on specific days of the week. You'll see little dots on it, or you'll see dots and check marks where it's been scheduled. You can have multiple programs assigned to clients as well. So for myself, I know I have a fixed calendar view for the program that I'm currently on. Then I have some conditioning work that I have also assigned to myself in a playlist or flexible view. So that is an awesome feature that exists. Now, I showed you a lot of different awesome features about utilizing digital software, in particular, the bridge. I think that there is one main drawback that I did discover over the past couple of years of utilizing the software, and that is the lack of visibility. And I think it's very similar. I always kind of equate this to our cell phones. Like, I remember my best friend's phone number from back in high school. I can recall it to this day. He asked me what his phone number is now. I have no idea because I don't press it into my phone all the time. I don't write it down. I kind of keep it in a separate brain. It's just one button where I see his name. So I think the main drawback with digital stuff is really is visibility. And that's something that you can actually counter if you're tactical about it. So one of the strategies that we utilize in the gym, when we printed out our spreadsheets, we would look at them all the time. So I knew what everybody was doing at all times because I could see their program right in front of me. I could look at their loads all the time, and it was really, really apparent. There is a way around that if you don't see it all the time in front of you, is you can use what we call the coach's clipboard. We log in on a tablet in the administrative view, and then we pull up people's programs, and before each session, we do a quick overview of that so I can make this top of mind awareness to be able to look at it from a administration standpoint when I'm coaching on the floor. So that's definitely something you need to do and be aware of, making it very visible. Visibility is key. One of the also upsides to this of having a tablet or a coach's iPad, as we call it, you can look up loads really quickly. And if that doesn't sell you on this, it should, because that is one of the major advantages of a digital platform, is having the training history and loads for exercises absolutely at your fingertips, literally, truly at your fingertips within a couple clicks for a client to have as a reference point. One of the other things that I highly suggest doing from a visibility standpoint is everything doesn't have to be all digital. I think it's very valuable, without a doubt, to use a whiteboard or a piece of paper to sketch out kind of a general training plan. This is something we make our interns do, actually, when we go through the program design process, to kind of design a program really from scratch to understand how the process works before they start utilizing templates, so they have a sense for that in their minds. And they go through and design the macro cycle, which you see up here in the upper left-hand corner of the whiteboard. They write out what they're going to plan on doing. Then they go down and break it down to the mesocycle level and the microcycle level, of writing out each day, sets, reps, all that good stuff. So I write down a lot of stuff when I go onto the bridge and open up a template, too, on a program planning sheet. So I want to make sure I keep the goal top of mind. So feel free to copy this down and write this down and utilize this. I write the goal, so I keep the goal, as Dan John says. I write down their starting point or any kind of areas of concerns, FMS scores, things like that. So I keep that in top of mind when I go through and adjust the template. And then timelines that we have available and how long they have to train. This helps me create that. And then maybe the periodization plan that I'm using, that's already kind of pre-done for you if you're using a template-based approach, but I will write down which template or which bucket of template I am using. The next thing I want to get into is nomenclature. We want to call apples apples and oranges oranges. Nomenclature, we often like to say, is the bane of our existence, without a doubt, in the fitness industry. Every exercise in the fitness industry often has 5 to 10 names. So we want to make sure we're calling it the same thing. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to do that in industry standards. For that, Exos has done a really good job of trying to do that for the most part. I think that, and we've really worked at it hard here at Results Fitness. I used to not think it was a big deal, but then I realized it actually is a big deal. And these little nuanced details really do matter, because it causes a ton of confusion if we don't call things the same thing. So I think the take home is you need to call it the same thing within your facility, without a doubt. Joe Ken is where I heard this from a while back as well. When he was at Louisville, he was the Carolina Panthers head strength coach. I don't know if he's still there or not, but he may be. When he said when he was at Louisville and they would go and somebody be out sick and he took over someone else's program, if he grabbed that program and they were calling an exercise by a different name, it made him look foolish, because he knew the exercise, he just didn't know what this coach was calling it. So we had to be sure we all call it the same thing. And as painstaking as it is, we have meetings about these things to make sure we're calling it the same thing. So you want to make sure everybody understands what a power clean is. The catch position is caught in that power position, and it actually starts off the floor. A hang clean, does that mean that it's a hang clean where I go into a full squat, or do you actually mean hang power clean? These things are important to establish. One of the nice things about the bridge as well, the video that's attached to it should show you exactly what you're getting, so it clears up a lot of that confusion. If you're going to call something a glute bridge, another coach calls it a hip bridge. This is one of the things that we ran into at the gym here, or called it a hip thrust. Those are 3 different names for the same exercise. We have to standardize that lingo. Make sure you have a terminology for your hops, jumps, and bounds. That a hop is a same foot takeoff, 1 foot takeoff, same foot landing. A jump, 2 foot takeoff, 2 foot landing. A bound, the 1 foot takeoff, opposite foot landing. Make sure all that stuff is understood and the videos match that terminology. It is absolutely critical. It saves everybody a lot of confusion, without a doubt. One of the things that we ran into recently that is another nice feature is the fact that we tried to clear up the name of a goblet box squat. This is getting confused by our coaches, actually. So a box squat is where you actually sit onto the box without rocking and then stand up. A goblet squat to a box is where we use the box as a depth guide, where we just touch to it for whatever reason we may be using these exercises, whether we're trying to teach someone to sit back a little bit more because they have a tendency to push their knees, initiate the squat with too much knees, so we need to do this, or they just have something they're trying to be consistent with their depth, so they use it as a squat 2 box. Our coaches were getting confused and using a box squat as a squat 2 box. So we had to kind of determine the problem. So what we did, we had run through some different scenarios in our meeting, and we just decided to call the box squat a box sit squat, to denote that you sat on the box. Now that was very useful in the bridge, because I had to just go in and open up and change the name. I could do that seamlessly, and it changed it everywhere in all the programs. If I would have done that in Excel on our template, it only changed it in the original template. It doesn't change it across all the stuff that's already existing out there. So super, super important. And then when we look at naming exercises, we use implement position exercise. You can standardize that language. An example of that, kettlebell is our implement. That's really the only thing that we abbreviate. Half kneeling is our position, and then it's a 1-arm overhead press. So we standardize that language across all of our platforms. We got that one from one of our Results Fitness University coaching members, Steve DiTomaso, who came up with that. He's a little different way of doing that. You think he puts the implement in a different spot, but this worked for us because most of our stuff was already called that way. So definitely make sure you standardize that language. We talk about templating. I'm going to go through this pretty quick, but templating sometimes gets a bad rap and has a negative connotation because people think it's a pre-designed program. The important thing to understand is that what you're really trying to do is automate as many steps as possible. Then there's going to be some skill in exercise selection, but do understand, like we talked about earlier, those parameters are going to be much more similar than different if training age and goals are the same. And then you can make, you know, platoon things in the team atmosphere where you've got 3 different types of templates, maybe designed on training age. But if you have a lot of beginners, they're all going to be on a very similar quote unquote template. It is something that is not set in stone. It's not a program that this is just what it is. You're going to do exactly this and it's not changeable. The important thing to understand when we say template is it is an outline. It's a framework. It's like an outline for a paper you're going to write. When you write the outline, that's not the complete paper. You're still going to fill stuff in, make changes, cut and paste, and move stuff around. It is flexible. That is a key thing to understand. So that's what our templates look like. We can have pre-selected exercises, or we can have what we call exercise skeletons. And that's simply, when we open up our body transformation template, looks like this. For our ramp, this is what it looked like on Excel. It's really a checklist. I can write a pretty good ramp if I can check this stuff off. And I just created an exercise in the bridge with the title of the category for the exercises that we are using. Then I go in and I switch the exercise, or I can just switch out to a pre-designed ramp. So I can customize it individually, which is a little more time, takes a lot more time, or I can switch it out and switch the whole thing out to something that I've pre-designed and then tweak from there. We take our movement patterns that we discuss in the program design book, which are hinge, squat, push, and pull for our resistance training categories. And we can take them, and they're also categorized by foot position and either horizontal or vertical in the push and pull categories. And that's how it looked on our exercise skeleton on our templates, which was the category. We take that and we created an exercise with that as well, which was the category in our template. So we do this because sometimes people think the exercise that has to be. It just needs to be something selected from this category. So this is a helpful way to design that so you're not stuck with the idea that it has to be this one exercise. So we utilize that often. So I buzzed through a lot and I went a couple minutes over, so not too bad for all those slides that I had in there. I want to give you a lot though as well. So what I also want to do is give you the coaching habits. So please make sure you go on to the website here, resultsuniversity.com/habits, and download that PDF that has those coaching habits on it. And on the socials, which I'm getting much better at and working on, those are my handles on there. Those are the only ones I really do.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Craig. Yeah. We're going to take, we have a few minutes here to take some questions. So I'm just going to open up the chat here. If you want to ask a question and you haven't put it in yet, there should be a questions tab in your webinar panel where you can type in anything you might want to ask Craig. If we don't get to your question, we will try to download these and get back to you all offline, because I know we are running a little short on time. We can go maybe a couple minutes over, but if we don't get to your question, don't worry, we will try to answer you offline. So first question here that I'm seeing is, do you use percentages for your general pop clients or absolute value? If absolute, do you change the intensity and reps for the clients or have them make the adjustments?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer to that is I haven't played a ton with the relative intensity a lot just yet. Most of the time with our general population clients that we coach in person, we will use the absolute loading either in kilos for kettlebells or in the pounds marker on that. Now, I will not pre-select those loads often. We use the training history, we select those loads when we're on the floor. We have our clients, because we train in a semi-private atmosphere with individual programs, our clients will input their own loads on they're logged in on the mobile view. We have apps, or we have tablets for everybody, and they log their own stuff in there. We'll look at it too on that coaching tablet. Sometimes we'll input loads while we're on the floor with them and check what they're inputting and look back at their history to make sure they're not underloading themselves. Sometimes we're repeating the loads too often. That's definitely part of it. But yeah, that's what we personally use currently. I'm sure we're gonna play with more of the relative intensity stuff a little bit later on. For the power lifters, though, I definitely use percentages of 1 rep max, without a doubt.
Got it. And if you were going to program for online clients, how would you have them select the intensity?
Yeah, that's a tough part. Sometimes when someone's an online client, you can pre-select those loads each week for them and write that in. What we do, the way we handle our remote training, we have kind of 2 different packages for our remote clients, which is we have like a 1 time a week meeting with a coach, and that's mainly programming. We just do a Zoom meeting once a week to kind of update things. And then we have a ongoing weekly remote, like I have 3 clients tomorrow that are remote clients. I'm going to jump on there and look at their loads and everything else weekly and prescribe stuff for them. So I may write that in ahead of time for them and tell them what loads I want them to use at their next session, since I can look at their stuff week to week. Depends on the level of service that you provide.
Got it. Can you talk a little bit about, we have a couple questions coming in about tempo and how that isn't listed as a parameter necessarily, and is that something that you put in the notes, or are you talking about that maybe verbally with clients, or how do you
So great question. Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm going to open, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So here's what I do. This is another tip for you, those of you that when you're training clients as well. I use an avatar that I created from a separate email account to use for these demos for people to explain how to do this. And we'll often walk through some stuff for people as well. So here is a program that I have prescribed to my bridge tester avatar. And I have it listed in calendar assignment or on playlist view. It'll come up. It's probably a little bit slow since we got so much going on. Here's the playlist view. I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to go in and edit the program. So what I really like about the bridge in particular, one of the things we had to do, one of the things on Excel is that space was a big problem, right? As far as formatting and trying to fit stuff into these little squares so you could be able to print it out. You don't have those constraints on here. So one of the ways we communicated that back in the old days was numerically, or then we switched to another system, which is moderate, prescribing fast, moderate, or normal, which is like a moderate meant you wanted to pause at midpoint. Really, I don't even do that anymore. What I would do if I prescribe this is that if I don't write something, that just infers I want a normal tempo, or I will simply just say 1 second pause at bottom. So it's very clear to the client. So sometimes we all know what we mean when we write this 1-2-1 or 2-1-2 tempo, but they don't know, and that creates a whole nother thing. So you can save a lot of this stuff in your template sets for how you write tempos, so you don't have to type that out every time too. So that is a wonderful tool to use where I can communicate it very clearly and not in trainer code for clients. So that's how we do it, is we write a note. And it shows up. You don't have to press those red dots like you did back in the old days. It's very, very visible.
Got it. Well, thank you. I know we are 1 minute over time. We are going to get disconnected shortly here. So I wanted to take one last opportunity to thank everyone for coming. Thank you, Craig, for this awesome presentation. We are going to be sending out a recording of today's session to everybody that attended. So if you want to rewatch anything or go back and see anything for reference, you can do that. And I would invite all of you as well, when you receive that email from Bridge Athletic containing the recording, if you still have any questions that have not been answered or you want clarification on anything, just go ahead and reply to that email. I'll make sure that someone from our team or somebody from the results team will get back to you with an answer. So that's going to conclude today's webinar. Thank you again everybody for coming, and look out for an email with the recording of this session that will be coming out shortly.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Have an awesome day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.